Look, we're going to settle this once and for all. You don't need to hide from the tropes. Embrace them. Hello, and my name is Kirk Patty Cake. Today we're going to talk about, you guessed it, tropes. In the writing circles that I typically have discussions in, there's always a lot of resistance to when tropes are introduced into somebody's story. Particularly, somebody is resistant to putting tropes in their own story, as if it's some kind of cop-out, if it's bad writing, as if tropes are always bad or always offensive. And the thing is, tropes are not offensive. Tropes are not uncreative either. I'll even bring you in on a little industry secret. Okay, lean in real close. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Tropes sell books. Tropes sell a lot of books. And don't believe me? I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about today. One thing that I constantly think about when I'm discussing tropes with somebody who's very anti-tropey is when I was living in another city, I attended a writing group that would meet every Wednesday. I attended a writing group that would meet 3 times during the month. The first Wednesday was always a craft talk. Usually there was some kind of guest, there was a presentation on a specific topic, and then the second and fourth were on critiquing members' works. And one of the presentations was on tropes, and an agent from a local agency came in and talked about tropes and the 5 major commercial genres. These are the 5 major commercial genres: mystery, thriller, sci-fi, fantasy, and romance. Now, that's not to say the other genres don't sell or they're not popular, but they don't push as many books as these 5 genres. That's why most of the series that you'll see especially fall into one of these 5 genres. And if you look at the on-screen chart now, you'll also see the subcategories in each of these 5 genres, such as sci-fi has dystopian and utopia, space opera, alternate history, cyberpunk, steampunk, military sci-fi, romantic sci-fi, hard sci-fi, which is going to have all of the super scientific words and the more scientific equations, and it's typically mostly written by men because it is so technical, and then soft sci-fi, which isn't quite as technical. Then you've got the fantasy with the urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy, traditional fantasy, horror, historical fantasy, weird fiction, comic fantasy, slipstream or interstices, and high or epic fantasy like Tolkien. In romance, you've got paranormal, contemporary, historical, western, gothic, regency. In mystery, you've got general mystery, noir, or hard-boiled. The difference between cozy and hard-boiled or noir is that hard-boiled or noir requires somebody who is a member of law enforcement to be the main character, whereas cozy mystery would be stuff like Nancy Drew, or you've got a mystery book club, or, it lets a novice kind of person, a journalist, get in the investigation, kind of be the main character. Historical mystery, police procedural, hobby mystery, and paranormal mystery. Then in thriller, you've got environmental, supernatural, historical, medical, psychological, legal, espionage, political, techno, thriller, and military. Now, this might not encompass every single type of subgenre that is in these 5 genres, but these are the major categories and the most popular categories in each of these genres. And with each of these 5 big genres, I bet you're already thinking of tropes that you see again and again and again in each of them. And today, we're going to go over some of the biggest tropes in all 5 of these genres so that you can know you don't have to avoid tropes and you can write a good story using them. First things first, let's start with the top 10 most popular tropes in romance, according to the RWA. Number 1 is friends to lovers. So, explanatory. Number 2 is soulmate/fate. You've got ties somewhere in the world, red string of fate, it'll drive you to your lover. Number 3 is second chance at love. Think any story where somebody gets dumped at the very beginning and they go out to find a new love eventually. Number 4 is secret love. Number 5 is first love. Number 6 is a strong hero/heroine. Number 7 is reunited lovers. So they've been separated and brought back together. Number 8 is love triangle. Number 9 is the sexy billionaire/millionaire. Can we talk 50 Shades of Grey, anybody? Number 10 is the sassy heroine. And one thing that I'm going to say that's not on this list that is also very popular is enemies to lovers. So 2 people that hate each other, and through the the things of the story, they eventually fall in love. Those are the most popular tropes in romance. Now, does having any of those in your storyline make your story bad? Not at all. But some people might feel like they're not writing a good story or they're not allowed to use them because they are tropes. Make your sexy billionaire. This is how you sell books. Two other popular tropes in romance include opposites attracting to one another and also fake romances. So think anytime two characters fake being together for whatever situation. Personally, I think the movie The Decoy Bride is a pretty cute fake romance. Also, kind of an enemies to lovers sort of thing. Okay, so then now we know some big romance tropes. What are some big thriller tropes? Well, one of the tropes in thrillers or mysteries or even suspenses are the lonely detective or police officer, private investigator who is usually 3 steps ahead of the others in his possession. Another thing that is also common, a trope with, which you could say cliche, with detectives and with detectives especially, is broody, alcoholic, lost the family in a fire or to some kind of murder. The bad guy sometimes kills the family. I'm thinking of the Evil Within video game, and you play a broody detective whose family all died in a fire. Another one is the brilliant genius crime lover who may have a drug problem, an alcohol problem, or both. Think Sherlock Holmes, and that idea is used constantly. You've also got the evil genius best friend, or used to be friends, or frenemies, which also falls in line with the bad guy in Sherlock Holmes. So then with a flawed character like Sherlock Holmes, it's common that somebody like that is paired with a brilliant supporting character who's also got a significant other because the main character is kind of a dick. The protagonist of a mystery or a thriller or suspense might also be somebody who's not involved in crime, like somebody who is a member of a reading club, an old woman who's a member of a reading club who reads mystery novels. It might be a writer of mystery novels. It might be somebody who runs a club at school. It might be somebody like Nancy Drew, who's a local journalist. It's going to play with that kind of cozy trope. Settings are also usually in cities, as they offer a wider variety of locales and characters and places to meet and places to hide. It could also be in a neighborhood that's fairly big, fairly established, and they use a lot of the scenery to establish that place. In thrillers and mysteries and suspense, the protagonist is sometimes, they're okay with stepping outside the law because it's all for the right reasons. It's okay to sidestep the law if you're doing it for the right reasons, right? And another one that will happen in suspense or mystery is sometimes the protagonist will have a score to settle with the main villain. And I'm sure you're already able to think of a dozen, or at least half a dozen, different stories in mystery and thriller that use some or all of these tropes. Again, it's not a bad thing. Going back into mystery, here are a couple more tropes that often show up in mystery. An absence of evidence, an anonymous killer narrator, anticlimactic unmasking, asshole victim. No, the victim is not somebody that you really want to care about, but they're dead, so whatever. The bad guy is beneath suspicion. They might be friends with the investigators. Bluffing the murderer, lying to the murderer. The butler did it. That's a phrase. Such a trope it became a phrase. A confession made in confidence by the bad guy. Convictions by contradictions. There's a eureka moment where everything just comes together all of a sudden. Everyone is a suspect. Everybody did it. Those are 2 more. An evidence scavenger hunt. There's a big evil plan. A victim being used for exposition. Finger-licking poison, or poison mixed into the food in general. The game never stops, so even when the detective thinks that the game is over, there are still things being dropped by the villain to keep the detective going. Somebody hidden in plain sight. Lights off and somebody dies. Something innocuous is mistaken as evidence. A needle in a haystack. There's more than one murder. There's never a suicide. Or suicide is never considered. A not-so-fake prop weapon. An overabundance of evidence. The red herring. Somebody saying way too much. The Sherlock scan, where they walk into the room and they look at everything around to find something. They even did this in Psych with Spencer, because that was his special ability, was the and to pick it all up. ten little murder victims, which would come from Agatha Christie. The twist ending, because usually there is a twist ending in a murder mystery, isn't it? But would you think that that is a trope? The meddling kids get in the way. And as they say on Scooby-Doo, if it weren't for you meddling kids, I would have got away with it too. And the last one that I'll mention is a character wakes up in a room that they're unfamiliar with. We might accept those tropes very easily in mystery and suspense and romance specifically, because they're all real situations, and so they're easy to just go, well, that's something that happens, so of course that trope exists. Okay, so then now let's take a look into a little more fantastical land and look at what kind of tropes might often appear in fantasy. The chosen one. You've got a character, only one character alone, maybe a handful of characters, who have a destiny that they are the only ones that can change the world. You've got the secret heir, an orphan who ends up being a long-lost scion of a royal throne. Or you've got the evil overlord who towers over everything, controls the realm that reflects his wickedness upon everything. You've got the reluctant hero who doesn't really want to go on the journey, but he's the only one that can, so he has to. You've got the lucky novice who's not really trained in what he or she is doing, but somehow things line up just right in order to get them the results that they need. And often the lucky novice is also paired with the chosen one. You've got the mentor. So your main character, your chosen one, will usually be paired with somebody older who will show them the ropes and give them basically the rundown on the mythologies of why they are the chosen one and what their mission is, and then train them to go and fulfill their mission. Even in The Sword and the Stone, you've got a mentor and educator in the old magician Merlin. Now, if we get away from character tropes, let's look at some world-building tropes that might take place with creating a fantasy story. You've got the world that never progresses. When a novel or series covers a society through the ages, but the world never really seems to move forward. Like technology doesn't advance, it's always kind of in the Middle Ages with no technology. There's one. Or if it is already in the future with technology, but stuff doesn't really seem to be continuing to go forward, you got the Pseudo-European medieval setting, which kind of takes inspiration for the buildings and the culture from Europe, but without actually using Europe. This is used a lot. You've got a powerful artifact, an object of great power that must be saved from falling into the wrong hands. Think Dragon Balls. And you've got homogeneous societies. That is, all elves are beautiful and love trees, and all dwarves are obsessed with gold and live underground. So these homogeneous societies pretty much live very segregated, and they live among themselves usually, and they all share a lot of the same characteristics, and they're known for those characteristics. And then these are some very common plot tropes for fantasy. The waiting evil. A long, long time ago, an evil force was defeated in battle and locked away, never to wreak havoc again. But wait, of course, it comes back, because something has disturbed whatever locked it away, and now that evil has returned to take its rightful place. Yeah, here comes the cavalry twist, when, everything is lost and the villain and his minions are going to win. Oh, but here come the reinforcements, because the bad guys aren't allowed to win. And we've made friends with everybody along the way, so they will back us up. Another trope in fantasy is the well-defined ideas of good and evil and having those forces fight one another. You've got the stories that start out with a quest where the hero is given a special task, which could include saving a princess, defeating a villain, gathering loot, finding someone, destroying some artifacts, any sorts of things. These are often the ideas behind, RPGs. Then last but not least, let's take a look at some sci-fi tropes. Traveling to distant stars is very difficult and takes generations. You've also got traveling distant stars is fairly easy and just takes a little bit. Traveling to the distance is very difficult and is done by AI and robots while humans sleep. Technobabble is speaking in high-tech tongues, and it solves any problem the crew is currently having. Reverse the polarity. The glip-glops are weak to theta radiation. Being able to solve anything at a dime because you just using made-up words. Alternate universes warn your universe is going to be devastated by a threat. Someone wakes up from cryosleep while asteroids are usually involved. A ship is found with people who have been in cryosleep for a while and drifted off in space. A ship is found, and there are people or technology or both that have kind of been forgotten and nobody really knows how to use it. The people who wake up, or the people that you run into, are evil but seem very nice at first. The people who wake up are the last survivors of one great civilization, or impart some wisdom. The people who wake up are the last survivors of once great civilization and impart wisdom. The survivors of the once great civilization die from the common cold before telling anyone the meaning of life. Aliens are kind, intelligent pushovers, and humans are destroying their worlds. Aliens are evil, brutal godlike beings trying to enslave humans. Aliens want to eat humans. Aliens want to lay eggs in humans. Aliens want humans to help them with problems they are too evolved to solve. It turns out humans were the aliens all along. Humans were the aliens all along, but they evolved into a different species. Humans use technology to evolve into a post-human civilization. Humans use technology to ascend to a state of pure energy. Humans use spiritual nonsense to become beings of pure light and love. No, humans use psychic powers to become one godlike overmind. Humans once had their great powers, but lost them when they were at war with the robots or aliens. Humans now live under a god emperor, keeping them from evolving too fast. The god emperor was an alien all along, and the humans must rebel. The god emperor was a supercomputer the humans forgot they had made, and they must figure out why. The supercomputer had to do whatever the humans wanted to do all along. The supercomputer was keeping them safe from aliens. The supercomputer was built to keep aliens safe from humans. Two species of humans evolved and are at war. They are fighting over ancient crimes. They are fighting over philosophical points. One is racist, one eats the other. One is technological and the other is super religious. Space is empty and humans are the first species. Space is empty and humans start filling up the galaxy. Humans make aliens. Humans and aliens hate each other and do nothing but have never-ending wars, usually for the God Emperor's glory. Humans and aliens live together, drink together, and have mixed species children. Humans use nanotechnology to make small, useful robots that can do anything. Oh no, they've become sentient. Humans clone themselves. Humans put their minds in the clones to live forever. Something goes wrong and humans can't have children anymore because there is too much cloning. The heroes must argue about the ethics of what they are doing until they are forced to take action. They turn out to be right and everything works out. They're wrong and they just help the evil space wizards start a galactic war. The heroes decide that other races have different ethics and they should not interfere. They say, screw their ethics, ours are better, and interfere. This fixes the problem and the space people are happy with their new constitution. The space people start a holy war to kill all humans. The space people and the humans fight until they have destroyed each other and nobody is left alive to remember what happened. The war between the space people and the humans turned out to be a Cold War allegory all along, and they eventually make up some red space wine and plate the gross space worms. And I'm sure you can think of so many tropes that pop out when you're thinking of sci-fi books, whether they're in space or with robots or with aliens. And they're ideas that you see again and again and again. And maybe you see some stuff cross because it's a sci-fi romance or it's a fantasy romance or it's a fantasy sci-fi somehow. And so you see multiple of these things. Maybe you see the chosen one or the mentor in the sci-fi. Maybe you see the mentor in the thriller. And so you'll see some of these ideas cross, but you'll see them constantly. And you know why? Because these ideas sell. It is not the trope that makes a book bad. It is the writing that makes a book bad. Okay? If something is poorly written, there's nothing that can save it except for good marketing. That can save it. At least it'll get you a lot of money. But if something is poorly written, it's not the tropes that make it poorly written. It's the overall writing. However, if something is well written, if you've got a great story, it's not the tropes that make it great, but it is the tropes that will draw people in. Because think of it, when you read a great story that's like an enemies to lovers type story, and you sit back after you finish it and you go, that was fantastic. I want to read more like that. What do? You go look for other stories that also contain that trope. So by embracing the tropes that are in your stories, you pick up on ideas and themes and setups that are popular in books that people want to read. And it kind of gives you a marketing niche that makes it easier for you to pitch it at people. Also pulls your book into an established genre that already exists. Look, everything under the sun has already been done. What sells is what works. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Your story doesn't have to be completely, utterly original in order to stand out. The viewpoint that you bring is what will be original. So focus on doing great storytelling, learning how to tell your story great, and take advantage of the tropes if that's what your story needs to use. There is absolutely no shame in using tropes in your story, and I hope more people come to learn that this is an okay thing, and you don't have to hide from the trope. It's not scary. It's not shameful. All of the best writers, all of the top writers use tropes. They subvert tropes, they play with tropes, they embrace tropes. The people that make the most money in the romance genre embrace the crap out of tropes because that's how you make the money. So, that's all I got to say on this. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you're a writer, let me know what tropes you're using or you think you might be using in some of your works in progress or published books. And if you're a reader or, any kind of content viewer, let me know what kinds of tropes you like or you might like to see more of. What kind of stuff do you go looking for that are these kind of specific types of stories? I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, talk to you later.